This is episode number 41 of the Fine Dining Podcast. Welcome to Toronto.
This is Mystery Meat's Fine Dining Podcast, helping foodies discover new restaurants and new friends. Here's your host, the founder of Mystery Meat, Seth Ressler.
Hello, and welcome to the Fine Dining Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Seth Ressler, and this is the podcast for foodies who love travel and travelers who love food. Each week, we go to a different city. We find somebody who is really passionate about the dining scene there, and we find out what's going on in the culinary scene in their town. And this week, we are going, for the very first time, to Canada. We're going to Toronto. We've got Viviana Machado on the phone. Viviana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you for having me here.
And you've got a great blog called Foodies Inked. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about your blog and find out how you started writing. We're also going to talk to you about the culinary scene in Toronto. And you've got a great restaurant recommendation for us. And finally, we're going to play a game called Out of the Frying Pan. You ready for that?
I'm ready.
All right. So let's talk about Foodies Inked. And let's talk about you. You are not a native Canadian, right?
I am not. That's right. I am originally from Colombia, and I came here to Canada about 12 years ago to Toronto, and I've been here ever since. And so, yeah, I'm not a native to Canada, but just like anybody else here, it's very multicultural, and there's a lot of people that immigrate to Canada every day.
So tell me why you started the blog. Why did you start Foodies Inked, and what really got you into food?
My whole passion for food started when I took a summer trip to Paris, and I spent a whole summer there right after university. And that's when I really got myself immersed with all things food and how just, the Parisians enjoy their way of living through food and wine, and just everything sort of surrounds that environment. And so when I came back, I really started to change my habits. And so with that, I started experiencing different restaurants within the Toronto scene. Again, very multicultural, so I just wanted to start going into different cuisines and, try raw oysters and go into Thai food or Indian food. And I started keeping track of those restaurants, and that's when the whole blog idea came about. And
now, is there a food blogging community in Toronto or in Canada? Because I know in some of these cities, the food bloggers get together and they all know each other. Is that true up there?
Oh my God, it's so true. And we compete with each other, but we all love each other and know each other. So it's interesting because there's two communities, and they're actually driven by major, if you will, international companies that are driving the foodie scene. So that'll be Yelp and Urban Spoon. So on Urban Spoon, you have a leaderboard that tells you what are the top, bloggers in your city. Right now in Toronto, based on that leaderboard, there are about 432 food blogs that are live, and people are blogging about food. Foodies Inked is right now number 12, but I know everybody within that top 20 list, and we all see each other at events. And then there's also batches that we all acquire and have on the Yelp side. So it's almost like you know every single foodie in the community, and we all attend the same events and have tips for each other. There's also a community called Food Bloggers of Canada, and you just basically have a membership there, and most of the food bloggers belong to that community, and they go to conferences and events and how to spice up your blog and make it more enticing and that sort of thing.
And in my experience, food bloggers are just great people to hang out with.
It's amazing because it's a different sort of experience when you go to a restaurant with a bunch of foodies, and especially food bloggers, because you know that the rule of thumb is nobody touches the food until everybody's taking a picture. And it's completely different because when I go with my family or friends, they're right ready to dig into, that piece of chocolate cake, and I'm like, don't touch it. Oh, but it's so hot. I'm like, I don't care. Don't even touch it. So it's like everybody, I actually took a picture the other day of all my foodie friends where, like, the moment the food landed on our tables, we right away took our cameras out and started snapping pictures, and the restaurants are getting pretty used to this behavior.
All right, well, we're going to get into the city of Toronto, but before we do, I know you've got a trivia question for me. So what is it?
So I actually was wondering if you know what are the top 3 Canadian food staples.
Top 3 Canadian food staples. And these, I assume, are sort of like raw ingredients, not like a processed food or a prepared dish.
A dish.
Dish.
Yeah, I'm referring to dish, yeah.
Okay, so it's not necessarily like maple syrup then?
Maple syrup is one of those, and it's definitely high up on the list.
Okay, I think Tim Hortons coffee's up there. Is that true?
No, I wouldn't say so. That's a brand, not a food staple, but but you can almost relate Tim Hortons to Canada quite easily.
All right.
You know there's a Tim Hortons in Dubai, right?
There is?
There is a Tim Hortons in Dubai, and I didn't know this until fairly recently, so it's interesting. We're expanding.
Nice. I knew that they were, when I lived in the Northeast, there were Tim Hortons there. I mean, they couldn't quite knock out Dunkin' Donuts, which has got such a firm hold on the Northeast.
Yeah.
All right, so maple syrup is one of them. I got to think about what the other two are, the other two Canadian food staples. So we'll come back to that. In the meantime, let's talk about Toronto. First of all, what is Toronto known for when it comes to food and the culinary scene?
I think, quite honestly, for all of us, it's just known for selection and variety and just different cultures coming together. So in any given block in Toronto, you can find a Thai restaurant, a French restaurant, and an Italian restaurant, and maybe even a Jamaican joint all together in one street. And so that is just a reflection of how multicultural we are, how, when people immigrate to Canada and specifically Toronto, we bring, our culture and food with us. So it's very, very key. And usually you'll hear people saying, I know where the best Italian restaurant is. I know where the best French restaurant is. Oh, no, I know what the best restaurant is for tacos. And so it's becoming quite a trend. And even the way the media talks about food is based on top 10 best restaurants for this, for that kind of culture and that sort of idea.
So Toronto itself is a very diverse city then?
Completely diverse.
Why does it attract so many different cultures?
Well, it's a very young country compared to like Europe and even South America and even the States, of course, as well. We're right now hitting 35 million to 40 million spread across, wide piece of land. People don't really venture too much up north because it gets really cold. And in Toronto, there's about 3.5 to 4 million people, but it's just the government's very open to, immigration and, skilled professionals, and they always open the doors. So, this is the country that started with Canadians, but became a country just for people that want to be part of this culture, and everybody that comes here really embraces it. But also Canada is very respectful of everybody's culture, so I think that's also a key element.
And everybody brings their food with them.
Their food habits and what they like. And so you'll find pretty much any restaurant that you can think of from any country here in Canada, like even from Armenia. There's an Armenian restaurant. I'm from Colombia. There's about 4 or 5 Colombian restaurants.
Talk to me about the neighborhoods. If I'm coming in for the first time and I want to explore some great dining districts, where do you recommend that I go?
Oh, yeah, there's a few places. Well, always known as the Fashion District, but really known to Torontonians as King West. King and Queen West are 2 streets that are key for the food scene, and most of the up-and-coming restaurants, the new trendy spots, are on King and Queen West, and it is in downtown core. There's also the Entertainment District. It caters to a more upscale crowd, but the food is just as well. And everybody knows if it's within the Entertainment District, it's just a little bit more pricey. There's the Kensington Market area, which is during the weekends is more like a grocery type, if you will, market. It's just like a food market, like anything.
Like a farmer's market, kind of outdoor kind of thing?
Exactly, like a farmer's market. And so it's just basically you get anything from like a Spanish tapas restaurant there to 2 Mexican joints, then you have your French restaurant. So it's, it has a lot of different options, but it is within the mid-range, and sometimes they're like, holes in the walls, but they're really, really good.
Nice. And are there some chefs that we should be following or we should know about from Toronto?
Absolutely, and very, very well-known chef. So from Toronto, you have somebody like Lynn Crawford, who also has a Food Network Canada show called Pitching In. And so she's very well known for sure in Toronto. She's actually battled it out on Iron Chef America. And she has her restaurant called Ruby Watchko, and it's just delicious. And most of the times that I've been there, she's been there cooking the food for you. So that's pretty cool.
Do you actually get to, meet these people who have been on television, who have been on the Food Network?
Absolutely. They come out. In fact, the time that I was at her restaurant, she brought the food to my table, and I was completely starstruck.
Wow.
They're really humble like that, the chefs here in Toronto. In Toronto, you have a huge known personality, which is Chef Mark McEwen. He has about 4 restaurants in Toronto, all really high-end, really nice food. He has an upscale or gourmet grocery store just like uptown. He's the host and the, producer of Top Chef Canada.
He also has a grocery store?
Yeah, it's a gourmet grocery store.
Nice. What do you get in there?
You can get all kinds of like imported cheeses and meats from Italy as well. Really, really good desserts. Some are locally sourced. Some ingredients are imported. So it's just like things that you wouldn't really find at your regular grocery store.
All right. So those are some of the chefs that we should be following. Talk to me a little bit about food events. You got anything great going on during the year that we should come check out?
The Food and Wine Expo is happening in November, and that's huge. It happens at the Metro Toronto Convention Center. So that is a huge show. All of the chefs that I mentioned most likely are going to be there, and they're going to be, doing demonstrations. There's a lot of, local wineries from Niagara region that are going to be there promoting their wines. So it's a huge show, and everybody really tries to make in. Even for us bloggers and for media, we try to sneak in and try to get a media pass. So
Right.
That's always really cool. So that's one. Recently in Toronto, and as of last year, we have Dinner en Blanc, which is a white dinner party that is outdoors.
I have heard about
Have you
this.
heard of it?
Well, because a friend of mine was doing one in Boston. Yes, I think his wife became the organizer of one in Boston. So, but I haven't actually been. Tell me a little bit about how it works.
So it started and it originated in Paris, France, and they've actually branched out to different North American cities, and even including Mexico. They've hosted quite a few of those events. So the premise of the event is all we want to do is just embrace food, and it's just an event for foodies that just enjoy being out in the scene. So in the summertime, what happens is they come to Toronto, you sign up, and it's by invitation only, so it's very special to even get invited to this event. If you get an invitation, you can invite your friends, and then you actually, set your table together. You pay about $40 for just to be able to get into the event, and you're supposed to wear everything white from top to bottom. There's no other colors that you can wear. If it rains, hopefully the umbrella is transparent or white as well, which is what usually happens sometimes, especially here in Toronto. So you have to bring in your own chairs, tables, and your own food. So basically, you're just really paying for the cost of admission to this event. But the beauty of this event, and there's a section on it on my blog, if you search for Dinner en Blanc Toronto, it actually is just how beautiful it is to have 2,000 people together at night in a major Toronto landmark, eating really good food that they've actually made and prepared. You can actually buy food too, but most people actually make it, all dressed in white and just having a great time with, their bottles of white wine, because it has to be white wine.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's...
Obviously.
It's a little dangerous.
It's dangerous, and it's not allowed as well. So you have your bottle of white wine as well. And then at night, it's dark, the lights are out, everything is white, and everybody's partying, and they have a DJ, and they have, the media taking pictures all over. They have music, photographers, so it just becomes this really good event. People are dancing. Some people ask me, why would you even pay to go to an event where you even have to bring your own cutlery and tables? And I said, I don't know, but 2,000 people came, and we had a fantastic time.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Absolutely, it is.
Is there a best time to visit Toronto? I mean, in terms of weather, it must get pretty cold there during the winter.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say, from a food perspective, there's a bunch of shows that are happening, even outside of the summertime. But within the summertime, there's a lot happening. So I would say anytime between June and August, it's the key time for people to come to Toronto and just experience the food scene.
Now, are you seeing any food trends in the city? Are you seeing anything new going on that is catching on?
Absolutely. Right now in Toronto, and you have to understand, because again, with Canada, it's such a young country, and we usually sort of embrace some of the trends that come from our friends over in the States. We're seeing the food truck scene really, really, coming around. In the past year and this year even, there are food trucks that are opening almost every month is what I hear about. Most of the food shows that are being hosted right now, unlike last year, are bringing those same food trucks to the shows.
It's amazing how many people say that when I ask that question. I mean, I hear about food trucks so often, and I don't know what it is that has made that. My guess is the economy, but I don't know what's made food trucks take off the way that they have in the last couple of years. But I hear that answer consistently when I talk to people.
I think it's more like a need for just having accessibility to really good and potentially healthy food without having to pay the prices of restaurants. That said, once we dial in, food truck fees and everything, some of these food trucks are pricing it quite high. But it's also the availability for chefs to be able to demonstrate their skills without having to when you work at a restaurant, some of the chefs are trying to prove themselves to the owner or if they're a sous chef, to the chef. So most of these guys are not, well-trained chefs that had a restaurant and then they decided to open up their food truck. Most of these guys are testing the waters, want to get their name out there. And I think so far in Toronto, 2 of the food trucks are actually going to become restaurants.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think if you're a young chef, it is much easier to get your start, and you can keep a control on costs. It doesn't cost as much to start with a food truck, and then once you build your base, you can move into a brick and mortar.
Yeah, and even with social media, that's even more of a possibility now because right then and there, you're already following that food truck and that person on Twitter and Facebook. So when they open up the restaurant, you already follow them, so you already know where they're going to be. You've already heard the news. Like, it's not usually word of mouth or you happen to see it in a newspaper. It's live. It's right there. So now I think social media is a key player for these food trucks to become what they are today. I actually think that's the biggest driver of why it's a trend now, thanks to social media.
So we're going to come back in just a minute and we are going to get your restaurant recommendation. We're also going to find out the answer to your trivia question. Name 3 Canadian food staples. And we're going to see if I can do that in just a second. Before we dig a little deeper into Toronto, I do want to let you know about the Taste Trekkers Conference. This is coming to Providence, Rhode Island in September 20th, 21st, and 22nd. It is the nation's first food tourism conference. This is an event for anybody who plans their vacations around food. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. We've got a cocktail reception where you can mingle with other foodies. We'll do group dinners. We will do a keynote address by the wonderful chef Matt Jennings, who has been shortlisted for Best Chef Northeast for a couple of years in a row. He is the 3-time winner of the Cochin 555 competition. It'd be more if he didn't have to retire himself because he was like, I'm winning into this thing too much. On top of that, we will have a number of fantastic breakout sessions. I'm in the middle of lining those up right now. They're going to be great. We've got one on the chocolate of Madagascar. We've got one on the history of rum in New England. We've got one on Peruvian and Bolivian cuisine. Going to be a lot of fantastic stuff. So really excited about that. All sorts of stuff. Food truck, circle, we'll do walking culinary tours. It's going to be great. Head over to tastetrekkers.com and get all the info, all right? Taste Trekkers, September, the nation's first food tourism conference happening in Providence, Rhode Island. We are talking to Viviana Machado of the Foodies Inked blog up in Toronto, Canada. And you asked me a trivia question earlier. Tell me what it is once more.
So I was asking you what you think are the 3 most popular, I guess, Canadian food staples.
The 3 most popular Canadian food staples. And we established that one is maple syrup.
Yes.
So I got the easy one, I guess. What do you call Canadian bacon in Canada? Do you just call it bacon? Like what?
No, we call it female bacon. And it's a different kind of bacon, so it's not your regular sort of strips of bacon. It's actually like a flattened version of a part of the pork, and it tastes actually quite different, which when I came to Canada was quite surprising for me because when I just read bacon, I was like, oh yeah, I'll order that. And I'm not quite if I can say that, I'm not quite a fan of female bacon, but it is a Canadian food staple.
They're going to kick you out now.
Yeah. So that's number 2.
Oh, that is okay. That was my second guess. Those 2.
The third one should be so easy because I'm surprised you actually haven't said it.
Really? So I was gonna say like polar bear. I don't know. What's the third one?
Poutine.
Oh.
I don't know if you know what poutine is, but it will be poutine.
So I have never had it. I've actually discovered it through hosting this podcast. People have told me about it. I have an idea what it is, but you describe it for me.
So poutine basically is French fries that are covered in gravy and then topped with cheese curds. And usually they use like Quebec cheese because that is the most delicious sort of cheese that you can use in it. Plus, poutine actually is originally from Quebec, if you will.
So French fries would be a side food up there, but poutine, would that be an appetizer? Would it be a side dish? Would it be the main dish?
It depends. Many restaurants, again, just how everything is changing these days, but you can actually have a poutine as a side. So you can actually go to a burger joint and have my burger with Coke and poutine. So it kind of replaces that fries concept, but it's still fries. Okay. You can go to a nice restaurant and order a smoked meat poutine. Another one of Canadian staples are Montreal style smoked meat. So you can actually put that on top and just layer another layer of goodness on that dish. So it really does depend on how they're serving it, but mostly the base of it is just the gravy and the cheese curds.
So those are the 3, maple syrup, female bacon, and poutine.
Yeah. Let's
talk about your restaurant recommendation. I asked you to recommend a restaurant that we should go to if we come to Toronto. What did you pick?
I picked Le Select Bistro, which is a French restaurant in the downtown core.
Tell me a little bit about this restaurant. I mean, why did you choose it? Who's the chef?
So I actually chose the restaurant because of the chef. I don't have a personal relationship with him. His name is Albert Ponzo, but I just love the concept of his food, and I just every time I've gone to Les Select, it's just such a great experience for me. It actually brings me back to my times when I lived in Paris quite a lot with the food and the setting. The restaurant is just fantastic decor. It brings you back to 1920s Paris with like the chairs are all like red leather, and it is just such an old and nice sort of look and feel. It's a nice audience. Like when you actually get into the restaurant, you actually feel like, oh my God, I just entered a bistro in Paris and I'm just about to have a great meal. And the chef he's just fantastic. Dishes that he has is just absolutely, it's an interesting style that he has, because he actually makes all traditional French dishes, just classic French cuisine, and he adds a little bit of that Canadian extra. So there's a few dishes that I can tell you about, but his whole take on everything is always adding that little bit of Canadian extra to bring it back home.
I know what that means when people say, an American twist on something. What does that mean usually when you say a Canadian twist on something?
So I'll tell you, they have, right now, one of my favorite dishes at Les Select is their beef cheeks. And a lot of people tell me, oh, I don't know if I would try that. And do cows actually have cheeks, and how does that work? And the answer is yes. And his take on it is just a delicious dish. It's obviously meat, and he does it with a red wine reduction, and it's just so sweet, but at the same time so decadent, and then it's savory. So that is a take that he does on classic Veuve Bourguignon, again, if I pronounce that correctly. And so the ingredients there are just like basic Veuve Bourguignon kind of dish, very French, and then he adds sweet potato chips, and then parsnip apple puree, which is widely used in most, sort of Canadian restaurants, and it just brings it back home to Canadian surroundings. So that's not a French thing, right? But that's how he usually does the dishes. So that's pretty neat.
Okay, very good, very good. So I sit down and I'm looking at the appetizers. Do you have a favorite that you would recommend?
Yeah, it is a favorite, but I don't know if it'll be a favorite for everybody. My favorite is the bone marrow. And he just does a fantastic take on bone marrow. And it's just like, I'm guessing it's grilled or baked bone marrow with a little bit of ocean sea salt and a little bit of parsley and baguette, and you just like spread the bone marrow on your baguette toast with a little bit of salt and the parsley, and it's just delicious. So the first time I tried bone marrow ever in my life was at Les Select, and I was not disappointed. And bone marrow is one of those things that you either really like or really hate, and I just went the really like route, so that was really nice.
And that's one of those things that I think not a lot of people have had. Talk a little bit about the presentation when that comes out. I mean, what does it look like?
It looks like a bone that has been caught, and it has the marrow in the middle. So it looks exactly as how it comes out from the actual cow or animal that they're using. So it's very visual in the sense that it is bone marrow because it comes in the bone. Some restaurants serve it, they scoop out the marrow from the bone and then you just serve it in a nice plate, and then you don't really know. I think that's just for aesthetics or optics perspective. But in this case, it's just how it comes, and it's just how raw, not raw in the sense that it's not cooked, but just how hearty it looks and just how well it's presented to me that I was just like, I need to try this. And I wasn't disappointed.
All right, the bone marrow and main dish, and you talked a little bit about the beef cheeks. Anything else that you would recommend for a main dish?
The duck confit is fantastic. It is one of those dishes that, once again, if a chef has not been cooking in the kitchen for a long time, it's a dish that you can easily mess up. And I'll tell you why. Duck, it's a very interesting meat because it's not like chicken, although most people say that it tastes like chicken. You can make it dry and hard pretty fast if you overcook it. And what Albert has achieved with this dish is he's actually made the meat really tender, and he uses the leg and the thigh of the duck. And so he actually does a really nice spin to the skin, and he actually makes it really crispy. They're just really soft and tender on the inside and really crispy skin on the outside, and it's just delicious. It comes with a little bit of, baked potato with layered onto some nice creamy, buttery filling and with some greens. So it's just a delicious dish.
What do we pair with this dish? What is on the drink menu?
On the drink menu, Les Select actually, they have a whole basement just full of different kinds of wine, and it is about 15,000 bottles of wines at that cellar that they have. It's huge. Most of the wines that they have there, they usually range between as low as $15 a bottle to $250, $300 a bottle, and they also include something crazy like Bordeaux dating back from the 1940s. Like, they really have a nice selection of wines. So usually when you go to Les Select, you can't go wrong with the wine list.
Talk to me about dessert. If we want to top off this meal, what's a great way to do it?
Oh my God. Gâteau au chocolat, or chocolate cake, is what I always go for. And this is something really interesting also about Albert Ponce, because he embraces sustainability and just local products as well. So as much as he has that French heritage, he's not from France, but as he has that sort of French classic cooking to him, he also keeps it himself grounded, and he sources locally. So he actually uses Callebaut chocolate with a little bit of flour and open-air Mennonite eggs and butter. Most of those ingredients are from local farms within Toronto or within the Ontario region. And then he tops that off with a really nice house-made passion fruit puree, sorbet pretty much, and it just brings together that richness of the cake with the sort of like really nice tangy taste of the passion fruit, and it's one of my favorite desserts at Les Select.
That sounds really interesting. That sounds really, really good. How much is this meal going to cost us when we're all said and done?
For a 3-course meal with wine, you're basically looking at about $65 range before taxes.
Well, thank you for the great selection. Are you ready to play a little game?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, here we go. This game is called Out of the Frying Pan. Here's how it works. I am going to ask you for a series of rapid-fire recommendations. Just tell me the first thing that pops into your head. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. We talked about food trucks and how they're exploding in Toronto. Do you have a favorite food truck?
Yes, absolutely. That'll be Buster's Sea Cove. And this is a food truck that serves just basically really good, takes on seafood, fish tacos, lobster roll. And they also have a bricks and mortar location at the St. Lawrence Market in Toronto.
Where's your favorite place to go for an original cocktail?
I would say Spirit House. It's a new place that opened up about 6 months ago, and it's on King West, which is a neighborhood I mentioned earlier. So that would be my favorite spot to go.
Do you have a favorite breakfast spot?
Absolutely. It's a new spot that we opened. It had closed for 2 years by Chef's Choice. Don't ask me why. And then they reopened it again with some of the original menu items still there, and it's called Ouf Café. And that's my favorite brunch spot.
Is there a great place to buy cheese in Toronto?
Absolutely. It's called the Cheese Boutique, and it's all about cheese. That's where most chefs also get their cheeses from. What
is the most romantic restaurant in the city of Toronto?
For me, it'll be Canoe. It's a restaurant by the Oliver and Bonaccini chain. It is fantastic food, really, really, very nice ambience. A little bit highly priced, but it's on the TD Tower in Toronto, and it's, I think, on the 50th floor. So you have a look of, all of Toronto, so it's really nice.
All right, besides Tim Hortons, where's your favorite place to get a cup of coffee?
My favorite place is a place called Sense Appeal. And they are on King and Spadina in Toronto, and they just have really fantastic coffee because they actually travel around the world to source the beans and make their own coffee. Really stupendous. So at this cafe shop, they don't actually ask you whether you want it medium, large, or tall, or whatever. They actually ask you what type of bean you like, and they will grind it for you and serve you that espresso or that cappuccino with that bean. So it's really nice. And last question, and I would be remiss if I didn't get an expert's opinion. Where in Toronto would you go for Colombian food? Colombian food, there's a place called Mi Tierra, and it's actually on St. Clair West is where it is, and that's sort of the place to go for Colombian food. All right, you survived. Thank you very much. That wasn't that hard, right? That's awesome. I love it. Thank you so much. Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Your restaurant recommendation was Les Select Bistro. It is located at 432 Wellington Street West in Toronto. You can find it online at lesselect.com. What if people want to find you online or follow you on social media? How can they do that? So to find me online, you can actually search for with the handle Foodies Inked on Twitter. I'm also on Facebook with Foodies Inked, and I also have a Google Plus and Pinterest account under the same name, so you can find me there. You can also go to foodiesinked.com to find more about me. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, and congratulations on being our first Canadian guest. You represented the country wonderfully, so thank you so much for doing that. No, thank you, Seth. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor. My name is Seth Ressler. This is the Fine Dining Podcast. Couple of show notes before we go. First of all, you can find links to all of the things that Viviana and I talked about in this episode on the website at mysterymeat.org. While you're there, you can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes and leave a review, please, as well. That helps us out quite a bit. You can also follow us on Twitter. We are mystery_meat, MEET. We're on Facebook as well. And now, if you want to leave a voicemail for the podcast,
podcast, you can actually go to the website and you will see a tab on the right side of most of the pages. You just click on that, and right there from your computer, you can leave us a message. And if you say something interesting, maybe we'll include you in the show. If you want to be a guest, you want to come on and talk to us about your town or city, tell us all about the culinary scene and the dining scene there, we would love to have you. Just head over to mysterymeat.org and click the Contact Us link and send us an email, and we will invite you on the show. Thank you so much for listening.
This has been Mystery Meat's Fine Dining Podcast. You can find links to the websites mentioned in this episode at mysterymeat.org/podcast. Thank you for listening.